Hello and welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. In the video today I'm going to be going through a quick guide for the Druid. I'm going to be looking at what happens at every level up and some of the options you get. What I'm not going to go through in this video are the spells for the Druid in particular. While recording this video I did record some footage of the spells, but I found that it's taken up too much time, so I'm going to put it in a separate video later on. So I'm going to create two Druids to play with, so I can show you the two different subclasses. So first of all, I've got to pick the class. Going to be Druid. And before I go through what race and skills and abilities, just show you what choices we do have to begin with. So here are the cantrips. We've got, what, 6 cantrips to choose from. Not a huge amount. We only get to have 2 at the moment. And so we've got Guidance, Poison Spray, Produce Flame, Resistance, Shillelagh, as I'm reliably informed it is said, Shillelagh, and Thorn Whip. We've got 3 new cantrips essentially at the moment, being Produce Flame, Shillelagh, and Thorn Whip, the other cantrips we've seen in other classes. Some of these overlap with the Cleric. Druids have access to more divine spells rather than the arcane spells. So we've only got 2 choices. So what I'm going to do with the 2 different Druids is pick at least one of the Druid cantrips so I can show you them. So for this Druid I'm going to pick Shillelagh and Thorn Whip. I think Shillelagh is a really good choice. I will go through the spells in more detail in another video, but very quickly, we can cast this using a bonus action, and instead of using Strength as the attack modifier and damage modifier, we can use our Wisdom instead. That alone is really good because we want to have Wisdom as high as possible anyway, because it affects all the rest of our spells. And secondly, it changes it into magical damage. And so there are quite a few monsters, especially at the beginning, on the Nautiloid, that are resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, unless it's magical, and this automatically changes it into magical, so it overcomes the resistance. And secondly, you're going to have Thorn Whip. Strike at a target with a Thorny Vine-like whip. It deals 1d6 piercing damage and pulls a target 10 feet closer to you, if it's larger or smaller in size. This is really good for kind of battlefield control, changing the position of things, maybe even getting one of your allies to move. Obviously there's damage though. And what I'm going to try and do, hopefully we'll see it, is use Thorn Whip to pull someone down from a high ledge and do some extra damage to them. For prepared spells, well, Druids are like clerics in the sense that we don't need to choose what spells are in a spellbook. These spells are always available to us. So we can just change the spells at will outside of combat. There are a few new spells for the Druid. We've got Entangle, Good Berry, Create Water is now Create or Destroy Water, and Druid is the first class to have access to Fairy Fire. Up until now it's only been certain subclasses, whereas now all Druids can take Fairy Fire. And yeah, we can change these at will. Very quick explanation of the new spells. Entangle, if they pass a strength saving throw, nothing happens, but if they fail, then the creatures will be entangled, so won't be able to move. Good Berry is a way of almost like creating small potions. So this says we can conjure 4 magical berries, which each heal 1d4 hit points. This is a bit different to the tabletop version. In the tabletop version, you produce 10, and each of them heals 1 hit point. Whereas here, this is just 4 berries, but heals 1d4 hit points. On average, we'll still heal 10 hit points if you take the average of 1d4 4 times. So this makes it more like a potion. Anyway, I've covered some of these in the wizard spell videos, and we can change this at any point. Anyway, just so maybe I can show you. I'll take Entangle, Fairy Fire, and Good Berry, relatively new ones. A quick look at the class features. So we get the spells that I've already gone through. Wisdom and Intelligence saving throws. We get proficiency in light and medium armor, which is quite nice, having proficiency in medium armor. And then proficiency in a bunch of different, very specific weapons. Now, in the lore for Dungeons and Dragons, I think ever since the beginning, Druids are known to not use anything made of metal. So that's a quick overview of the class. And then, what race do we want to pick? Well, we want a race that has Wisdom as a bonus. So then, when we get to abilities, we can put Wisdom up to 16 to get this +3 bonus here. If you haven't already seen my short video about introduction how to make a druid. You can have a quick look. It's 58 seconds long and quickly goes through what races are good choices. So, the best choices in terms of being a good druid in combat. Obviously outside of combat this has no effect. The stats have very little effect on it. We could have a wood elf, which gives us extra weapon proficiencies, which is nice. However, I want to be casting Shillelagh. I just want to go over this one more time. We have to imbue a staff or club. So these extra weapon proficiencies, the longsword and short sword anyway, not so useful. However, having proficiency in ranged weapons will be good. It will help us have extra options. So there's a wood elf, human, just because we get this extra wisdom. And also all of these extra stats here. Basically we get more stats, but no other perks or abilities. Could pick a half elf with wisdom as one of the bonuses. Either high or wood, to be honest, doesn't really matter. Or drow, depending on what we want as the extra ability. So dancing lights, cantrip, one of the high elf cantrips. If we're thinking this from a purely mechanical point of view, a high half elf is, you've got more choice than a drow half elf, at least at level 1. So we could pick one of these other cantrips. Maybe Mage Hand. I do quite like Mage Hand. Wood Elf gives us extra speed and proficiency in stealth. I'm not so impressed with that. I mean, the speed is actually really good, but just proficiency in stealth, we can get that from other places. And then also, here we are, Gold Dwarf. Even more proficiencies, but no ranged weapon proficiencies. We get this wisdom, we get the bonus of constitution, and your hit point maximum is increased by 1 every level, which is quite useful. But you do have to keep in mind that the racial speed for a dwarf is 25. While I didn't put a massive amount of importance onto the wood elf for having a high walking speed, I don't like the fact that the dwarfs are slow. At 25, getting into combat can be a bit more difficult, a bit more annoying. And what am I going to go with? I'm going to create 2 druids. I think I'm going to create one as a human. And this can be Tav. And then the next one's going to be called CVG, for casual veteran gamer, right? So I'm going to pick the human. Appearance, save some time, just leave it as it is. Skills, we get to choose from these. There's quite a lot of choice as a druid, what we want. So, what do we want? Animal handling. Well, what druid wouldn't be good in animal handling? And nature. Well, I'm going to put one of them with perception. Maybe the other one will be medicine and nature. And then 2 abilities. Abilities, right. So I've got a choice here between the extra armor class and initiative and dexterity saving throws, which affects being prone. Quite important, I think. Or this extra constitution gives us extra hit points and helps us maintain concentration if we ever have to lose it. The things with druids, they have quite a few spells that are or use concentration. So I think here I am actually going to put constitution higher, with the idea that I'm going to be using Shillelagh in combat, so I don't need the dexterity because I've got my wisdom, and I haven't got a bad dexterity. I've got a low intelligence and low charisma because I don't plan on using them. I think another option would be having a high strength, only so that getting around is easier with using jump. And I think that's quite important because you can effectively gain some extra walking speed when you use jump. Because if a character's strength 15 uses jump, their jump is 15 feet long, but it only costs 10 feet of movement, so you gain an extra 5 feet. However, I want as many hit points and want to be able to maintain concentration. Alright, I was a bit of an idiot. I didn't actually finish off the ability points of Tav. I made everything up to 10, so you get no negative penalties for any skill checks or abilities. And then put strength up to 11, so we get a tiny bit of extra movement on the jump. Okay, for the second druid, Change the name to CVG. Set the background. I want animal handling and survival proficiency. Sounds like a good druid to me. For race, I'm going to go for the wood elf because we get the bonus to wisdom, which we definitely want as a druid. We get this bonus to dexterity, which is helpful for almost every class, and we get these proficiencies here more for the longbow and short proficiency, so I can have extra options using ranged attacks. Appearance, just going to leave it as is. Although we did have a female, so add a male there. Class Druid. For the cantrips, I am going to choose Produce Flame. No, Guidance. I want to choose Produce Flame because it's one of the new Druid cantrips. However, there is, I think we can call it a bug at the moment, that it uses the Intelligence modifier instead of the Wisdom modifier, which is not how it's really supposed to be, since all the other Druid spells use Wisdom. And I'm going to choose Guidance because it's a top tier cantrip. For the prepared spells, I'm going to leave them as they are because we can change them in the game anyway. For skills, I'm going to take Medicine and Nature, as I said before. Then for abilities, since we are a wood elf, get rid of the Charisma. On Wisdom at 16, done. Dexterity at 16. And it's pretty good to take Dexterity up to 16 here because it's the only other ability score we can get up to 16. And I want to have the higher Dexterity for my ranged attacks, and it's also going to help with all the other stuff that Dexterity helps with. I'm going to put my Strength up to 12, Dexterity 16, Constitution 14, Wisdom 16, and just take these negative modifiers in my stride. Right, and there we go. Next thing I'm going to show you is the level up screen for level 2. For a more in-depth version of the Druid spells, I'm going to have to wait until I make the video for that. This is the level up screen from going from level 1 to level 2 for a Druid. We can customize what spells we have prepared, but we can change that at any point anyway, as long as we're not in combat. It's the same spells. We've got only level 1 spells to cast. We get an extra spell slot. Then we get a choice of subclass, Circle of the Land or Circle of the Moon. Both subclasses gain the Wildshape action, so they can turn into a badger, a spider, a wolf, or a cat. I'll show you those later. The difference between the two subclasses then is the bit below that. So Circle of the Land, get two things. Natural Recovery, which acts similar to the Wizard's Spell Recovery. So once per day we can replenish expended spell slots, allowing you to cast more spells. And also we get an extra cantrip. For Circle of the Moon, we get this extra Wildshape action, or choice, which is for a bear, a polar bear. And then also for Circle of the Moon, just here, Lunar Mend, so you can expend spell slots to regain hit points while Wildshape. So Circle of the Moon is really based around improving the Wildshape, giving you extra options for Wildshape, and being able to keep yourself in Wildshape by healing yourself. Circle of the Land is more based on spells, just get this extra cantrip, and we get this natural recovery. So for the cantrip, I don't want to pick poison because it's in a Constitution saving throw, and it's poison damage. I don't want resistance, so either Shillelagh or Thorn Whip. I'm going to go with, trying to keep him at range, I'm going to go with Thorn Whip. There's a bit less damage, but it can help move people around the battlefield. The next time I get to choose a cantrip for this Druid character, I would probably pick Shillelagh. There's no real bad choice here, both are decent. So that's Circle of the Land. And then turn good old Tav, Circle of the Moon, though we don't have to make any other choices at the moment. Next up, I'm going to show off the Wildshape action, and we can see here, Wildshape change, two of them, replenishes on a short rest. Here I'm going to go through the different Wildshape actions, starting with the choices that all Druids get, and then going to go to the Land of the Moon Druid, Circle of the Moon Druid. So here we have the spider. Right, quite large, and have a look here, Venomous Bite to do 1d8 poison damage, not bad, and possibly poison, so giving the enemy disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. Spiders also get the Arachnid Jump bonus action, which is 37 feet range, which is really far. Not quite as good as having Jump on a very strong character, but still really, really good, considering you don't have to cast any extra spells to get here. Look at it. And it didn't even use up any of my movement. So as a spider, you get your normal movement, plus 37 feet as a bonus action, So you'll be able to go normally 67 feet. We also can dismiss the wild shape at any point. And we also get this web action, which I'll show you very soon. The web action has a range of 60 feet. Pretty good. You can see there's a circle which shows the area of the web. And it creates an area on the ground, which can enweb creatures. Which, if they are enwebbed, then attacks against them have advantage. The enemies have disadvantage. Also has disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. Plus, this is flammable. So if you want to mix this in with another character who sets fire to the web, you can create like a, not exactly a fireball, but you can create an area that it all goes up in flames. So just to show it, there it is on the ground. Got this web, got some intellect devourers there. We have the Wildshape cat. There we are. So they can attack. 1+0 slashing damage, obviously not that impressive. And can meow to attract the attention of creatures nearby. However, what the cat isn't for is combat. What the cat is for is you can scout around. I mean, who's going to attack a cat, really? So your cat can be used for infiltration, scouting ahead, finding out where the enemies are, and planning your attack. The cat has 2 hit points, right? Really not made for combat, but it's really, really good for scouting ahead. Next wild shape. We've had the spider, we've had the cat. Let's go for the wolf. There we are. So bite doing 2d6 damage. So, not bad. Pretty good actually. Jump 25 feet plus some speed, it said. So that does use up 10 feet of movement. The speed's gone up to 45 feet also, which is really, really good. Now, what wolves can do, once per battle, each ally within earshot can move an additional 10 feet during the next turn, so giving a buff, which is pretty awesome. And then also exposing bite. So if your attack hits, the next attack against the target from within 5 feet will be a critical hit. So the wolf is more of a team player, as you kind of might expect. We all know wolves pretty much live in packs. So the wolf isn't going to be the one necessarily doing massive amounts of damage from the front line, but it's going to be able to help your allies get into combat, maybe out of combat, and then also create critical hits. So that means you can choose which attack will be a critical hit, assuming that this hits. I'm going to turn into a badger now. I think that looks pretty awesome for a badger. So, because of 2d4 piercing damage, it's alright, not bad, got 2d4. We can jump 21.7 feet, better than average. All the other things, but we also get burrow. So let's go to turn mode. So we click on burrow, and then we can choose a place to burrow to. On the ground we go. Come up here. So this should be able to avoid opportunity attacks as long as you're not already threatened. We're able to get past creatures and appear anywhere on the, not anywhere, but appear on the battlefield using anywhere within 40 feet, which doesn't use up all the movement either. So you can burrow for up to 40 feet and then move a bit. And then the attack clause, lash out with deadly clause. The target takes 1d4 slashing damage and might be pushed 5 feet away. So a tiny bit of battlefield control. So the badger here, a bit like the wolf, isn't going to be dishing out loads of damage, but we'll be able to get around the battlefield and, well, maybe push people around so you can get people to where you want, and hopefully there's going to be chances to push people off ledges, because that's the best thing it's going to be used for. Wildshape bear. That's what I've been waiting for. Look at that. Huge bear. Standing on 4 legs, is as tall as the other characters. 2d4 damage. Again, average, same as the badger. But then we get the goading roar. There aren't very many abilities that kind of lure enemies and allow you to act as a tank, as would be like in a traditional MMO, getting aggro. So you roar nearby enemies to goad them into attacking you. If they get to roll a wisdom saving throw, if they pass, obviously it doesn't work. The range is 30 feet, which isn't bad actually. You might have to be careful depending on how many enemies you might goad into attacking you. And the good thing about the Circle of the Moon Druid is, okay, you might be like, well, you know, I'm going to get lots of people attacking me, but we will be able to use, as a bonus action, regain 1d8 hit points. Here we are. This is the stats of a bear. Armor class is only 12, which isn't very high. Health is 30 though, which at this level of play is decent. It's actually really good. You might not get characters getting 30 hit points until probably about level 4. Once all hit points have been used from the bear, you still turn into your druid form, and you might be able to wild shape again if you've got your Wildshape charges saved up. And then you get another extra 30 hit points. So that's been a look at the different Wildshape options. As we level up and get extra Wildshape options, I'll show you them. But the next thing I'll show you will be the level up screen at level 3 and a quick preview of the spells that we get as a druid. Something I just want to point out about the Wildshape and the actions with the attacks. So here it says 2d4 plus 0 slashing damage. But then when we come to the rolls that were made, damage roll is 8, 2d4, pretty good, right? And then plus 4 unarmed ability modifier. It's actually a total of 12. Because it is a bit strange that the attack roll doesn't include the bonus from the ability modifiers. So plus 4 is equivalent to is the modifier for having 19 strength. So the damage isn't as low as it seems with the tooltip, so it's like bug, or they haven't labelled the information correctly. So don't be put off by the fact that it isn't plus 5, because it's actually pretty awesome. I managed to roll the highest possible, right, 12, but still, 2d4 plus 4 is a decent amount of damage. So a quick tip here for being able to heal yourself from Wildshape. So I've just had a battle, taken 10 hit points of damage, and I've still got a short rest available. So what I'm going to do, dismiss a Wildshape. This only works if you've only used one Wildshape, by the way. Then Wildshape back into the polar bear. Got 4 hit points, and then take a short rest. And we've got 2 Wildshape charges again, and we're at 4 hit points as well. Quite interestingly, this is where Gale would normally appear, but my main characters are currently Wildshaped, and Gale isn't coming out. So let's see if we dismiss Wildshape. And there's Gale. So do keep in mind that staying permanently in the Wildshape form might have an effect on what you can see and who you can talk to. Something from the Circle of the Land for once. We've got the natural recovery. Recover 2 level 1 spell slots. And recovers on a long rest, just like the wizard's spell recovery. This is the level up screen for the Circle of the Land Druid level 3. And there are 2 things to really be going over. One are the new level 2 spells, and secondly, the choice of what Circle of Land we're actually going to follow. I'm going to go have a quick overview of the spells first, because then it will make more sense when I describe these different circles of the land. So I'm just going to go through the new level 2 spells for druids. I've covered some of the others when I've done the wizard spell videos. So starting with Barkskin, I'm going to give a willing creature armor class 16, which is okay. 16 isn't amazing. Most wizards can use mage armor to get higher, and this requires concentration, so this doesn't seem to be that good considering it's a level 2 spell slot. Enhanced ability gives you advantage on one of the checks you get to choose. Again, concentration is required, and it's a level 2 spell. The concentration bit is what lets this down for me. Flame Blade, conjure a flaming scimitar in your hand that deals 3d6 fire damage and sheds bright light in 10 feet and dim light in 20 foot radius. This is decent. Again, requires concentration. Kind of a bit of a downside is if you've got this weapon, you're probably going to be in melee. You might be taking a few more hits, so you're more likely to lose concentration. Flaming Sphere, this is probably my favourite of the level 2 spells. So you summon the Flaming Sphere that does 2d6 fire damage to nearby enemies and objects, creates light, and then in subsequent turns you can move it and cause damage. And even if enemies pass a saving throw, this will take some damage. Heat Metal, this is probably my second favourite spell. This is really good if you've got a tough creature to be attacking. So cause a metal weapon you can see to glow red hot. The creature holding the weapon takes 2d8 fire damage and receives disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the start of your next turn. There is a save to it to Constitution. So it's a debuff, and if you can keep your concentration, as a bonus action on subsequent turns, you can deal 2d8 fire damage and impose disadvantage for another turn. So if you cast this on an enemy, in subsequent turns you can use a bonus action to do damage from this, and then use your action to try and do damage in another way, either with a spell or cantrip. It's really good. Similar thing for Moonbeam here, except you have to use your action in subsequent turns to move the Moonbeam, and it does 2d10 radiant damage if anything enters the beam, and then you can move it. Protection from poison. This doesn't require concentration, so this is actually quite good if you know you're going to be in a battle against something that hits with lots of poisons, especially as against spiders. So it gives you advantage on saving throws against being poisoned and resistance against poison damage. Spike growth. Shape a piece of ground with the hard spikes. A creature walking on the spikes deals 1d4 piercing damage for every 5 feet it moves. And also the difficult terrain, so it takes longer for them to get out of the spike growth. I guess this sounds like it's really good, and I think it is. It requires concentration, but if the enemy is flying, or if they're clever enough to jump out, then this isn't as effective. But it's a nice way to, one, have some battlefield control to create an area of difficult terrain, but then also cause damage if anything walks in that terrain. But obviously you have to be careful with your own party that if they walk through this, then they can take damage. Some of these other spells, yeah, I've gone through in the wizard video. Then for Circle of the Land, they get a choice of Circle of the Land Druid, what circle they belong to, and depending on which area, the type of biome you choose, you get extra spells prepared, some of which you can prepare normally, some of which aren't available to druids. So Arctic has Whole Person and Spike Growth. Coast, Cast Mirror Image and Misty Step. This is probably my favourite one. 2 reasons. One, these spells aren't available to druids anyway, but also Mirror Image and Misty Step are both very, very, very good spells. So you can cast Mirror Image, which doesn't require concentration, and then we'll see if we can transform afterwards. Desert, Blur, which I prefer Mirror Image to Blur, because Blur requires concentration. And Silence. Forest, cast Sparkskin and Hold Person. Probably one of my least favourites, we can have this anyway. Grassland Invisibility. Good spell to have. Watch my video to find out just how good that can be. And Pass Without Trace. Again, quite decent, but limited in when you really want to be using it. But these aren't available to druids normally. That's not true. Pass Without Trace is available, Invisibility isn't. Mountain, Mirror Image, which I like, and Spike Growth, which you can get anyway. Swamp, Acid Arrow. This isn't really that great, the spell Acid Arrow. And Darkness. You can use Fog Cloud instead of Darkness. And Underdark, again, Web and Misty Step. Again, love Misty Step. Web, we can use Web when we shapeshift into a spider, so it isn't as useful. Obviously with Web you can do it when you're wild shaped and also when you're in your human form. There aren't any particularly bad choices. I mean, for me, the worst one is probably Swamp, because you've got other spells you can use instead. I'm going to go with Coast, because of Mirror Image and Misty Step. But at this point, yeah, you make your own choice, what spells you like and what you don't like. If we want to cast these extra spells, they still require the spell slot to be used. So there's Misty Step. There we are. And we've used up 1 level 2 spell slot. Alright, on to the Circle of the Moon. So we get the same choice of spells here. No other choices to be made at level 3 for the Circle of the Moon. And we haven't gained any extra wild shapes either at level 3. So at level 3, a bit more interesting, a bit more choice for Circle of the Land. Getting access to maybe a couple of extra spells. Circle of the Moon, just level 2 spells that you get access to. Finally got my party to level 4 on top of this house. You can see in the background some sort of bug. Windmills going around, but the sails are stationary. Some magic windmill. Right, so going to go through the level 4 options for the 2 different subclasses of Druid. So first here we have the Circle of the Land, and we can just prepare 1 extra spell. It doesn't really matter, it's just the same as before, just 1 more than normal. Then all level 4 Druids get an extra wild shape, Deep Wrath, I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that one. and get an extra cantrip. Again, this is for all druids. This isn't particular to the Circle of the Land as it was previously. I'm going to give this character Shillelagh because I feel like sometimes he's lacking attack options. And then we get to pick a new feat. So what I'm going to go through here is each of these relatively quickly and talk about both the Circle of the Land and Circle of the Moon, how it applies to them. And to be honest, it's very similar for both. So if there's an ability improvement, I would suggest putting Wisdom at +2 to get an extra ability score, extra bonus to Wisdom, because the spells are based off Wisdom. And plus with Shillelagh, we can actually have attack rolls and damage from Wisdom. Athlete, I wouldn't really bother with this. The strength or dexterity isn't likely to do much for you. And honestly, you don't end up prone that often. Defensive duelists, when you attack by melee attack, you use reaction to increase your armor class, potentially causing the attack to miss. It's okay. It's the use of your reaction. Reactions don't get used very much in the game at the moment. It's just nice to have that. I'd personally prefer the +2 wisdom. Dual wielder, I'm not dual wielding. Actually, I've got this guy some medium armor, +1 medium armor and a shield already, so his armor class is at 19. I don't think this actually would reduce my armor class. I'm not using my bonus action for a melee attack anyway. Great Weapon Master is not using a great weapon. Heavily armored, maybe. If you want to give your druid heavy armor, but increase the strength scored by 1 isn't necessarily very useful. Lightly armored is pointless. We've already got medium armor and light armor proficiency. Magic Initiate Cleric. This is plausible. So you get an extra spell slot level 1, and you learn 2 cantrips from the Cleric spell list. The spellcasting modifier for these spells is Wisdom. That's the important part because we've got a bonus to Wisdom already. But there aren't that many Cleric cantrips, and they overlap a bit with the Druid anyway. So you're not going to get... the Cleric cantrips aren't that amazing. We've already got Guidance as a Druid. The only one I might take is maybe Sacred Flame. Not amazing in the end. Magic Initiate Warlock. If you can pick a level 1 spell that isn't using the Charisma modifier, that's good. But the cantrip you really want from a Warlock is Eldritch Blast, but that uses the Charisma modifier to attack, so I'd probably avoid that. Magic Initiate Wizard. Again with the cantrips, maybe you could pick some more utility cantrips if, for example, your Druid is not an elf of some sort. Then you could use Light or Dancing Lights, where it doesn't require your intelligence. And then for your first level spell, maybe something like Longstrider, although it's available to you as a Druid, you can use your Wizard spell slot to cast it rather than your Druid spell slot. So Magic Initiate Wizards could be useful. Martial Adepts, not likely. I mean, Battle Master Maneuvers are decent, but I'm going to be I've always got to compare this to Wisdom modifier, and then Wisdom just wins out here. Mobile, your speed increases. Mobile is not really bad for Druids because they do end up in melee sometimes, and you get the extra speed. Dash is a bonus action. Oh no, sorry, don't. And when you use dash, difficult terrain doesn't slow you down. And as long as you've made an attack, you don't provoke opportunity attacks. To be honest, about not provoking opportunity attacks, it's a bit easy to jump and disengage. So mobile, maybe not as good as it first seems. Moderately armored, we've already got proficiency with medium armor and shields. Shield Master, +2 dexterity saving throws don't come up too often. Obviously, it'd be nice to have that bonus. And you can use reaction to shield yourself, take no damage. Maybe, but again, compared to Wisdom, the Wisdom's going to win out here. Skilled, if you find you're missing proficiency in your party, perhaps you want to take this. But again, I'd still rather take the Wisdom. Tough, hit point maximum increase 2 for each level. This is going to be good for any character, really. I mean, at this point, we're going to get an extra 8 hit points, which could be an extra 20% or more of your total maximum hit points. I wouldn't turn this one down necessarily. And the Weapon Master, gain proficiency in 4 weapons. I think the Druids have proficiency in enough weapons already. Unless you're really wanting to use, I don't know, halberd or something, or greatsword. Yeah, I'd probably avoid that. Honestly, I think the clear winner here really is getting the +2 to Wisdom, because it affects your spells, and with Shillelagh, you're also increasing your damage in melee combat. So I'm going to go with that. And then that's the circle of the land done. Quickly show you circle of the moon. Not much extra to show you. Get the same options. We get to choose a cantrip. The more people who have guidance, the better. Don't really need this poison spray. Then also the wild shape of dire raven. So this is an extra wild shape option for the circle of the moon. Something I don't think I've mentioned so far is that the circle of the moon, their wild shape uses a bonus action rather than action, which makes it more useful to use after combat started, because you can use your bonus action to change shape and then use your action when you're wild shaped to use your attack. Whereas the circle of the land has to use their action to wild shape, and then they can't attack. So it's a nice bonus to have. Swap feet. I don't really want to swap it, but I just want +2 in wisdom, just like before. So here we have the dire raven. This one is specific for land circle of the moon. There we are. So we get this beak attack, which is 2d4 damage, but we also get rend vision, which can take some damage, and they're blinded. Blinded is really good because they have disadvantage on their attacks, and all attacks against that creature have advantage. Also we get to fly, so you can get around the battlefield really, really quite well. Look at that, a long, long way. Flown along. Here we are. Look at that, some sort of infernal goat or ram. So we can gore 3d4 +0 damage. That's a step up from the other wild shapes, because the maximum is 2d4, maybe 2d6. We get dancing lights, which is lovely because it's a bonus action. I know concentration is required, but it's a cantrip, so we can keep casting it. And we can also use charge, which will allow us to move a certain distance, 30 feet. And then you might even be able to move afterwards as well. Okay, it's time for my final thoughts on the Druid. So overall, I think it's a really strong class. You've got the options to go into melee, especially in your wild shape, and you've got some decent spells. We've got some new spells added also, which is lovely, especially these level 2 concentration spells. We've got Flame Blade, Heat Metal, Flaming Sphere, Moonbeam. We've got lots of choice, lots of versatility. I like the new cantrips, Shillelagh and Thorn Whip. I don't care so much for Produce Flame, especially at the moment when it's basically bugged and it's using the intelligence modifier rather than the wisdom modifier. Once that's changed, Produce Flame is going to be a nice option for a ranged attack and producing a little bit of light. The two subclasses, Circle of the Moon, Circle of the Land. I personally prefer Circle of the Moon just a little bit more. With the extra choices, especially the bear. The bear's amazing. The extra choices for the wild shape are really useful, and the fact we can use that wild shape as a bonus action. But that's not to say I don't like the Circle of the Land at all. One thing I haven't shown you in the video is that it is possible for another wild shape option if you use your illithid power a few too many times. I didn't get to that during the recording of this video, but maybe in a future video I will show that. Also, in the future videos I'll be showing off these spells in a bit more detail. I didn't include it in this video because I think it's take a bit too much time, take away from just the leveling up process. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, leave a like. Subscriptions are always appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.